So by coincidence, or not, it's my turn to speak today. So I do have some slides. Thank you. I knew it was all in divine order, so we're just... So anyway, there we go. Whoops. Here we go. Okay. So the theme for the month is curiosity. So, I ask myself, what am I curious about? Curious about a lot of things, but ever since I've been young, I've been curious about what's it all about? So that's the title of my talk. What's it all about? And so what does that mean? Well, it's about the existential questions of life. Where did we come from? What are we doing here? What is the good life? Where do we go? What happens? And so those have always been, something that has intrigued me and that I've explored. And so, one of the things when you start from that place of, so I'm here, I'm human, I'm thinking, I'm having this experience, is from a human perspective, we think about, or at least our experience tells us that there's something that creates what we have and what's happening here. It's all time related and something has created. So we think about this world that we're experiencing and having some sort of creator or some sort of source, some sort of cause. We live in a cause and effect kind of world. And so for the sake of convenience, even though this might be a loaded term for some of you, we'll call this cause God, okay? And so, again, we all have, or we might have a different idea of what God is. But my favorite definition of God is, it's the mystery. God is the mystery that transcends human categorization. So we don't have a category for God. It's just beyond that. So we might say, or one of the next things that comes up for me is, well, what's God like? And so the way that I kind of think about it is this absolute consciousness. Okay, and again, source, creator, and so what I think about next is, well, what are we doing here? If God is this consciousness, whatever the kind of nature that is, what do we have to do with all of this? Now, there's a theory, and you can buy into this or not. I don't know. It's kind of fun, and I like it. But there's a theory about why God created the world, this three-dimensional form, and us, human beings. And it really kind of revolves around a problem. If this God is, or this challenge that God might have, if you can imagine that God is limitless and doesn't realize it. Because how do you experience limitlessness? There has to be some sort of limit. So here's the challenge for God. Again, if you want to adopt this theory, that God in his unlimited state just doesn't experience limitlessness, limitation, or that there's an alternative. God could create something that was limited. All right, so those are the two choices. And so here is the proposed solution, that God has created us, and we've evolved to the level of consciousness that we now have, but we've forgotten that we're part of God. Okay? And so that is a way that God experiences limitation, because we're expressions of God, and we experience most of the time the fact that we're limited, right? Yeah, I do. I don't know about you. So then I'm still asking this question. Okay, so why am I here? And so here's an answer. Now, some of you may not be familiar with this person. His name is Morpheus, and he's in the movie The Matrix. That was made about 20 years ago, and it's a science fiction kind of movie. And so who is Morpheus? Well, in Greek mythology, Morpheus is the god of sleep and god of dreams. And he often appears to people in dreams. And so, you might be thinking, I know I did, what's a matrix? What is a matrix? And a matrix is some kind of structure or form in which some other process happens. Okay? And so in this movie, the protagonist, whose name is Thomas Anderson, he is just a regular guy who's a computer hacker. And he hacks into something that is really strange. And that's how he ultimately ends up meeting with Morpheus. But now, Thomas Anderson is known in the movie as Neo. And for those of you, or the one, and if you'll notice, Neo is an anagram for one. Also, Neo in Latin means new or young. So he's just kind of knocking on the door of how things really are. And so Morpheus, when he meets up with Neo, he asks him this question. He says, have you ever had a dream, Neo, that you were so sure was real that you were unable to awaken from that dream? How would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world? And then he gives Neo some advice. He says, you have to let it all go, Neo. Fear, doubt, and disbelief. Free your mind. So ultimately, Morpheus offers Neo a choice. He gives him a choice of taking two pills, a red pill and a blue pill. Now, the blue pill, if he chooses that one, will just keep him on with his regular life that he's been living. But the red pill will introduce him to some aspects of life that he has never dreamt of before. So what Neo gets introduced into is this whole idea that his life has been computerized. And as a hacker, he's hacked into the fact that it is. And he can wake up to that. And so Neo chooses the red pill. And needless to say, he has a lot of adventures. He goes down the rabbit hole. And if you want to know more about that, you'll have to see the movie if you haven't seen it already. But so, being curious, I'm just wondering, have any of you had the kind of experience in life where you've had a dream so real or something has happened to you in life that has caused you to think, what is this all about? What is really real? Do I really know the truth? Anybody had that experience? You're in the right place. So, what Neo is faced with, and what I think we're all faced with, is how do we figure out what's real? What do we put our faith in? So now, if you use the word faith, typically in our culture, people think about something that you believe that can't be proven. And I have a different idea about faith, and I want to share that with you. So this is not a definition that's original with me, but it's one that I really like, because in this idea about faith, it involves the heart and not just the head. It involves intuition. What's happening in your heart? How are you feeling? What is really this kind of heart-head combination? It's very important. And to see our experience as the embodiment of life's mystery, okay? So I love this idea of mystery, and that's why this whole definition of God that I offered to you is very, very attractive to me. And that we are somehow the embodiment of this mystery. This experience that we're having really represents that. And that, so the present expression of possibility to really be present right now is really critical in being able to understand and experience, to really get to the bottom of what this is all about. What's it all about? And then, so faith is actually a conduit to a bigger reality. I experienced the world in a really different way when I heard this expression. It's not seeing is believing, but believing is seeing. And that was like I wasn't quite ready for that at that time, but I kind of eased into it. So faith is really important. And so this says, in the book of life, the answers are not in the back. So we have to figure them out for ourselves, either to find, either within ourselves, or find somebody who we can trust and have faith in and believe that they've got the answers. It's a choice that we all make. And so I'm curious about that. I'm curious about faith. I'm curious about faith in general. I'm curious about my faith. What do I have faith in? And do I really practice that faith? So I want to explore that a little bit with you. You know, what do you have faith in? I mean, have the aliens actually landed? Do the stars when you're born, do they actually make a difference in how you live your life and what this experience is about? Religion, science, you know, these are questions that we all have to answer. Or not, or choose not. You can take the blue pill. Just live a conventional life, and this is it. Anyway, so I want to tell you a story about faith, and that can kind of give us a little springboard about how we might explore this. And so this story actually involves smallpox, which I'm guessing you probably realize you probably don't hear a lot about smallpox these days, and that's because it's one of the 2 diseases that has been eradicated. Smallpox has been eradicated, and that's a huge triumph. Now, it wasn't easily done, and so my faith story, has to do with that. And so back in primarily in the 60s, there was a really aggressive program to vaccinate, because that's how you get rid of the disease of smallpox. There were no treatments for smallpox, but you could get vaccinated from it. And so whenever there was an outbreak, there was a real aggressive kind of program to track people, to vaccinate people, and to do that sort of thing. So it was making good headway, except in certain spots in the world. India was kind of a troublesome spot. And even though they'd made a lot of progress, when it got to about the mid-70s, there was a real serious outbreak of smallpox in a certain part of the country. And those who were in charge in the World Health Organization, and then in India itself, decided that we were very close to the end, and we needed to get really aggressive about how we were going to eliminate this. So the Indian government, along with the World Health Organization, decided that they were going to forcibly vaccinate people, which is, kind of a big step. So there's in the east of India, where this outbreak occurred, there's an Aboriginal tribe called the Ho tribe, H-O, and so they were wanting to go in there and vaccinate, and the tribal leader said, no, they were resisting that. And so an American physician epidemiologist records this story, that one night there was an intruder broke down the bamboo door of this kind of primitive adobe hut, and Lakshmi Singh, who was sleeping, jumped up, screamed, and ran. And the intruder was a government vaccinator. And it was in the middle of the night. So Mohan Singh, her husband, grabbed an axe and started chasing the intruder. Well, they didn't get too far before, the rest of the government team of vaccinators and local authorities, police people, wrestled him to the ground and actually vaccinated him forcibly. He actually resisted, and there was a little bit of blood. They got the rest of the family and vaccinated them in turn. Lakshmi Singh, which to the very end, who was somebody who resisted this, bit one of the vaccinators very hard on the arm and left tooth marks in him. So after they had corralled everybody in the house, coerced them into vaccination, they were standing in a small courtyard there, and kind of the family on one side and the vaccination team and the authorities on the other, kind of separated by this cultural divide about how they saw things. And so Mohan Singh was standing there, kind of reflecting, and just paused for a couple of moments. And then he went out into his small vegetable plot and pulled the last ripe cucumber that he had and came in and gave it to the Indian doctor who his wife had bitten. And so Lawrence Brilliant, who had been standing off in the side there, was just baffled by this. And so he had, that is Dr. Brilliant, had somebody who had been assigned to him who was a translator. And so he turned and he asked him, what is the meaning of all of this? And so the translator asked Mohan Singh why he had done what he'd done. And so Mohan Singh, standing up ramrod straight, said this: my dharma, a religious duty or moral duty, it has a number of different interpretations. My dharma is to surrender to God's will. Only God can decide who gets sickness and who does not. It is my duty to resist your interference with his will. We must resist your needles. We would die resisting if this is necessary. My family and I have not yielded. We have done our duty. We can be proud of being firm in our faith. It is not a sin to be overpowered by so many strangers in the middle of the night. Daily you have come and told me it is your dharma to prevent this disease with your needles. We have sent you away. Tonight you have used force. You say you act in accordance with your duty. I have acted in accordance with mine. It is over. God will decide. Now I find you are guests in my house. It is my duty to feed guests. I have little to offer at this time except this cucumber. So Dr. Brilliant, as he is recording this and he's reflecting on this, he writes, I felt numb and torn. For an instant, I wondered if I was on the wrong side. So if you stop and think about this, that Mohan Singh has done what he has perceived to be his religious duty when people have come into his home, broken in the middle of the night, forced him and his family to get vaccinated, which they didn't believe in. And then, in a short period of time, without any anger or rancor based on his tribal customs, offers them some food, what meager food that he has. So, in my current culture, I think, is he a saint or a fool? What does he have faith in? I think that he has faith in his God. And he has faith that there is an order that is unfolding. And if he follows his dharma and does what he sees to be his duty, that will unfold because God's in charge. I think that he has faith that the people that he was dealing with were people who were true to their faith and their duty, and that they were doing what they thought was right for them, even though he disagreed with that. So in my book, he's a saint. I think that he has really lived up to the faith that he professes and been in integrity with it. So what's it all about? What's it all about? So I'm curious about that, about my faith, about your faith, how you live that out. So I'll give you kind of a shorthand version here. We don't have a few hours. It's just, I just get a few minutes. And I'll use Unity's 5 basic principles, okay? Because they have a great deal of meaning to me. And so Unity's first basic principle is, as we affirm today, that there's God and there's no other enduring power. That God is all. I guess in the science world you'd call it the field. In mysticism, there is only one. It's the fundamental teaching. So light and dark, war and peace, love and hate, famine and prosperity, it's all a part of God. It's all a part. Even the part that when I look out on the world and see the news that I go, no, I don't want it that way. Mohan Singh said, this is not the way I want it, but I'm doing the best I can, and I believe that this is unfolding in divine order. That's an inspiration for me. So the second of Unity's basic principle is that we are an expression of that divine, of God. And again, I know you hear me harping on that all the time because it's a big theme of mine. Because for me, it really is what it's all about. It is why we're here. To remember who we are. We are love. And we can express that in really powerful ways, like Mohan Singh did, to do the best that he could, to be that expression of the divine. We have that power too. sometimes I don't always do it as well as I'd like. But I'm in there pitching. So our third unity principle is our thinking determines our experience. So how we think about things really has a profound effect on the experience that we have. So faith is really, really important. If your faith is going to determine how you see or how you think, it's absolutely critical. And so getting back to the story, Mohan Singh he is thinking in a certain way, and he has his faith, and so he sees this experience in a way that says, I'm divine, these people are divine. When we do what we are called to do, we're all a part of this divine journey. So very important how you think, what the faith is that you have. So the fourth principle is prayer and meditation get us more connected with God. And prayer and meditation are, pretty much universal spiritual practices. So you could just substitute spiritual practice. Spiritual practice gets us into a greater awareness of God, whatever that spiritual practice is. So it's like spiritual practice is that red pill. It's going to take you to places that may be a little scary, but you have all the resources you need to deal with those things. It takes a risk to really be curious enough to want to know who you really are, and the courage to pursue that. And so the fifth unity principle is about practicing. It's not just about knowing, but it's about practicing what we believe and practicing our faith. And for me, Mohan Singh really demonstrates that in a very profound way. And Neo does too. He has some pretty profound journeys. So that whole matrix thing is really a metaphor for our own circumstances. The one. We can see Neo could be every man, any person. We each are the one. And so where do we find our guidance? Where do we look to for answers to help us figure out what it's all about? Very important questions. So for me, my faith is evolving. It's still being refined all the time. And my integrity with my faith is also. I'm working to be more in integrity with that all the time. And it's practice. And it's a practice. So, to quote again Morpheus' advice to Neo, you have to let it all go, Neo. Fear, doubt, and disbelief, free your mind. It's a lot like the advice that Paul, in his letter to the Romans, wrote. He said, don't be conformed to this world. Don't take the blue pill. Friends, there is more than what is appearing in front of you. But practice the renewal of your mind. Free your mind. And you will divine the will of God. God bless you, friends.